How'd you know that?
Shock the nation, bud.
Another Shock the Nation podcast. Chad Marquardt here with Jesse Bridwell.
The dog doing? What's up, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Doing good. So, we both had an opportunity to watch the thing that came out on NewsNation with Ross Coulthart, I think is how you spell his name. It was the crash retrieval whistleblower. And it's about Jacob Barber. So you want to tell a little bit about what old Jacob had to whistleblow about?
I think you should start it off. You're gonna articulate it better.
All right.
On what he experienced and all that, and then we can start our back and forth and what we think.
All right. So Jacob Barber, he was in the Air Force, and he was initially a mechanic, and I think he was a helicopter mechanic.
Yes, sir.
Got out of the Air Force and was recruited, and my guess would be by, some military defense contractor companies or something of that nature. And he ended up becoming a helicopter pilot for them. So he not only was he a helicopter mechanic, but he was a pilot, and I would assume he got his pilot license while he was in the Air Force. And that's what they recruited him for, was to drive these helicopters. And so what they would do is they would be told, and it was just him and probably a group of guys. There's probably guys on the ground, guys in the helicopter, and they were told where to go, and they'd have something to pick up and extract, and that was their job. And they didn't, sometimes they probably knew what they were picking up, sometimes they didn't know what they were picking up, and it's one of those deals. You don't ask questions. You just do your job. You take it from point A to point B, and you're done, right? So I don't know where this place is at. He called it the range, was where the majority of his jobs were. So, where would you guess that would be? Down around Arizona, New Mexico, somewhere around there?
Well, around those installations, they have different ranges, and they call like range 1, range 2, and some of them are training ranges, and I guess some of them are like where they test equipment. But the way he explained it might have been a little different. I'm not sure. It's just a big desert area they'll give them grid coordinates where to drop down and pick stuff up and dip off with it.
Right, and I just know he called it the range. I mean, that's just what he called it. So he said that's what they would do. And so he kind of talked about this, and giving his background. So then they had 3 guys. So they want to do their background check on this Jake Barber, right? So they had 3 guys to back up his story. One was Don Paul Bales. He was law enforcement and in the military for 25 years. So I would assume
when he was in the military, he was also in the special forces.
Okay.
He wasn't just regular forces.
They had another guy, Fred Baker. He was in the Air Force. Then he was in a special warfare vet. He was a special warfare vet. So whatever that means, what would that mean?
Probably similar.
Special forces. Okay.
Well, because the Air Force labels their forces their specialized forces a little different. I don't know why they would label it that way, but I imagine he's probably special forces.
Okay, and then the last guy that they had was Lieutenant Colonel John Blitch, and he was a Green Beret, and I think he was in Delta Force. So I watched another video that you probably haven't watched. This Ross Coulthart, he does a podcast then after he comes out with this NewsNation episode, and he talks to other people. And then he said, yes, he was in the Delta Force as well. So basically, those 3 guys were special forces, and they probably saw a lot of shit, right? I mean, they did secret stuff and saw things that most people don't see, and probably things that you didn't see when you were in the Army. I mean, they were the guys, they were boots on the ground, right, and doing stuff. So anyway, they had these guys on, and said, hey, is this guy telling the truth? And all three of those guys said, yes, I believe him, he's telling the truth. Now, they didn't go in really much to if they were involved with this stuff. I mean, did you get that from watching this? Like, they were involved?
They didn't really specify that they helped out with this stuff.
Right. And maybe they were and they didn't want to come forward. I don't know that, other than they were just there to say, hey, if he's telling you this happened, it happened. So, they're doing all this, and they're going through and talking about one mission, and I'm just kind of going in order here of how the report went. And he's going, and he's taking his helicopter, and he's got a tether, and he said it was a 150-foot tether from the bottom of his helicopter, and he was going to pick something up. And he said as he got there, and I'm guessing it was night because he said he was wearing night vision, and he saw this thing, and he goes, I can only describe it as an egg. It looked like a white egg. And he said it was approximately 20 feet long, and he says it was about the size of a large SUV. And he said it kind of was like a pearly white color. And he tethered it, picked it up, and took it where it needed to go. And again, they didn't say if it was him or someone else. I think it was someone else that was with him, but someone filmed it. So they filmed at least them dropping this thing off. And I do have, which I'll show here, I've got a just a little picture. I just stopped the video here, and this is from NewsNation, by the way, but you can see the tether, right here's the tether, and then the egg right over there. So it just looks like an egg. And I don't know, he said that there wasn't any seams to it that he could tell, and there wasn't anything of that nature. So I don't know. What do you think, Jesse? I mean, do you think he picked up something otherworldly, or is it something that possibly we may have?
Well, we're missing the part where when he was going to pick up, they called it like a 8.
Well, we'll go to that after. So,
okay, so
yeah, we're not going there quite yet.
Okay. That the egg-shaped deal, do I believe that we have that technology currently? Yeah, and I do believe that they've retrieved crashed material and they've back engineered it.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, do I think that was otherworldly, or just could it be one of ours? I don't know. And the problem with this is everybody gets caught up in the fact of like, oh, we just released this new jet, and there's no way that we could have that material now. And people don't realize, like, the Black Hawk, like SR-71 that outran a missile, that was in the 1980s. And we didn't even know about it until they finally came out about it. They're like, oh yeah, this thing was like fast enough to outrun ballistic missiles. Well, that was in the 80s.
Right, right.
And then these jets we're releasing now, modern, like, for instance, are like stealth jets. Like, you can't pick them up on radar, and they're extremely advanced. They're releasing that now.
Right.
And they always release stuff 30 years after they've created it, and I mean, I don't know. I believe that we have that tech, but I don't know if it's otherworldly. I guess I can't.
Otherwise, you're saying, is it back engineered? Is what you're getting at?
I think it's back engineered. I think that we have retrieved crashed material before, and we back engineered it. Now, I don't know what he picked up as otherworldly.
Okay.
And by the way, these guys that do this stuff that they've got, clearances to do this. Do you think they know if it's ours or not? No.
No.
And like he said, he didn't even know what he was picking up. They didn't even tell him. They're just like, hey, you need to drop here. You need to pick this up, and you need to drop it off here. And they get the fact that he got to film it too. His buddy or whoever was there got to film it is crazy to me, because normally when you're doing stuff like that, they snatch your phone up pretty quick, and they say you can have your phone back when this is over.
Well, but again, so these guys weren't in the military at the time, right? So they're contracted out. They're contracted out. So it might be a little easier for them to get by some of that stuff, maybe. Especially if whoever's in charge of that group, they're in just as awe as everybody else. And maybe they're like, yeah, we need to have footage of that because no one's going to believe us, type of thing.
Well, and I understand that, but you remember the story of the guy, the whistleblower on Sean Ryan's show? He was a Marine, went over to Haiti when they had that whole
when they had the tsunamis and stuff.
And he took a video of these guys that were obviously contractors, all blacked out, loading stuff into a
something
aircraft.
Hovering above the ground.
Yep, with no visible propulsion and all this. What's the first thing that they did when he got back? They snatched his shit.
Yep, they took everything from him.
And then his, I guess you would say, commander approached him and said, you need to be very fucking careful about how you go about, the next part of your life. You probably shouldn't talk about this.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, and not to say that someone can't sneak video footage or recordings or something. I mean, it can happen, right? Someone can screw up and not get everything that they need to get. So I'm not going to say that can't happen. But okay, let's say it is bogus, right? He's getting a lot of headline now. I mean, the dude was on NewsNation, and it sounds like what's the new UFO agency that the government's running?
Oh shit! It's
I can't remember what it's called. It's something like that, right? So now it sounds like they want to meet with this guy and see stuff. So, and who's to say that this guy doesn't have more stuff, right? I mean, maybe he's got more stuff that he doesn't want to release yet because he's kind of afraid, or I don't know.
Well, some people that are in that position, I guess, they keep bigger shit and they hand it off to people that, if case something happens to them,
right?
You release it, because that's the only thing probably keeping you alive. Is like, if they did contact him and said, hey, you got to keep your fucking mouth shut, and he says, hey, you can threaten me all you want, but I've got a lot more, and if you do something to me, it's in hands of other people. So, that kind of keeps him alive. Like, I don't believe in the guy that was on the Sean Ryan show. Remember, what's his name? Dr. something. He talks about like meditation and all that stuff, and you said he's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I kind of want to get into him later too, because we're gonna go on to other stuff. I'm not gonna
go into him hard right now, but what's the one thing he said that I've got a lot more shit.
Right.
So that way, if they do something to me, it's gonna get released.
Yeah, and he's he's a guy that. And you're talking about Dr. Stephen Greer is who you're talking about.
Yes.
He's a guy that has been doing this for a long time, and he's talked to a lot of people. And he, the dude's a doctor, and he's got money. He's got connections. He's got that stuff right now. He's the type of guy too, and I'm sure he's lied to a lot, and he doesn't know what's 100% real and what isn't, right? Because he's probably getting told stuff that's legit, stuff that isn't, to try to mislead him and get him to go somewhere else, right? I mean, I don't know. But the guy is a little different, and we'll kind of get into him here in a little bit too, because
the guy's a little different.
And I don't want to get into it because this was part of the stuff that I want to talk to you about. But
okay, we'll move on.
Now I did some research, and whereas I would say that this Ross Coldheart did a really good job of searching this guy out, this Jake Barber, and found and got him to release that video of the egg. But I did some research too, and it took me a while. I guess I'm kind of going to be a whistleblower too here. But I did find a picture of someone that was on the craft, or that was in the helicopter. They took another picture of this egg, and I'm going to release that right now. So I'm showing this to you for the first time, Jesse. So this is it right here. It was actually, gosh dang it, and it went away. I'm clicking on it. There it is. It was actually Mork and Mindy. So it was Mork on top of it. And I don't know why it's going away. I'm just trying to make it big. I'm trying to make it full screen.
Click on it again.
Well, here we go. So there it is. It's Mork. And there's the egg right there. So this is probably before your time, Jesse. Well, I know it's before your time. I was a little kid. So Robin Williams was Mork, and he came to Earth in an egg. So there you go. So that, yeah. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I had to put a little Mork and Mindy out because we're talking about a big white egg. So, all right. So then he goes, he talks about that egg, and, that's great. And they said that's great because they got footage. So then he talks about something that upsets him a lot, and he kind of cried when he was talking about this. But he went on another mission, kind of the same type of thing. He didn't know what he was picking up, and he said as he was getting close to the site, he said his comms changed. So, and you might know this more than me, but he said he could tell it was something super secret because of how the comms changed. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's he mean about that?
All right, so when we're gonna, to make this more simplified, so they say that these things put off radioactive radiation, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's like an electromagnetic field around them. So, for instance, your comms, if you get close to something like that, that could severely affect your comms, right? It's an electromagnetic field. There's radiation, whatever. That could fuck your comms up. But I don't know what he's trying to lean to with that.
I guess my understanding was the way I interpreted it anyway was more so did they have to change channels? Did it go to a certain type of radio frequency that's super secret?
He doesn't really specify. He just kind of, he doesn't really talk about that much.
Yeah, and that's, I guess that's how I took it. So I was kind of wanting to ask you about that because I thought maybe that was something you picked up on. So maybe I was getting into it more.
They say those craft push off like radiation and electromagnetic fields, so that could be what he's talking about.
Okay.
As soon as he got close,
it was messing up with it. Okay. So yeah. So then, as he was getting closer, he said that his comms changed, and he knew it was something serious. And again, we're not going to speculate what that meant. So, but then he said emotionally he started feeling different. And he got there, and he called it a octagonal craft?
It's an 8 octagonal or something. He said the number 8 and then an octagon. So
yeah, octagonal craft. Edges. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
8 edges on it.
He said he picked this thing up, and he felt like he was becoming one with the craft or something that was in the craft. And like he felt like he was being, and I can't remember if he said possessed or taken over by an entity or something. And then this is where he kind of broke down and started to cry. And he goes, it was beautiful and sad at the same time and scary. And he goes, he kind of felt like whatever that was scared, but showing that it loved him and everything and all that. And then he took it to wherever he took it. And I believe Ross asked him, so where did it go after that? And he goes, well, it would go to a secret location. And he speculated some bases that it could have went to, but he didn't really know where it went.
Well, I think what he was saying is, like, he drops that off somewhere else in the desert, closer to where they can get trucks to, and then they can load it and take off. And so basically, wherever he go pick these craft up, obviously they're out in the middle of the desert, and there's probably not roads nearby. So I imagine he just picked it up, transferred it somewhere closer to a road where they can get a truck access to, and that would be the case. But he said that he felt like the entity that connected to him was like a divine entity, more feminine though. He said it was almost like God was talking to him, but not in a masculine tone. It was more of a feminine tone.
Right. Well, all right. So then it kind of gets weird after that. And I got a little, I guess, really didn't really understand what was going on after that. So I don't know if it was shortly after he picked up this octagon thing, or if it was a long time after. They didn't really specify. But him and his group or whatever was stationed kind of somewhere, and they had an objective that they needed to pick up these hard drives from something. And they knew where it was, and they needed to pick it up. So they had intel, right? The intel every day was telling them, okay, be ready. And then they got intel that these drives were gone, and that the people who had the drives were all dead. And so the next thing they knew was it was in the middle of a lake, right? It was in the middle of some lake, up in a mountain somewhere. And I don't remember, did they end up getting the hard drives themselves?
I didn't get all the way to the end of the video.
Okay.
Because, but I know at one point they started moving towards the drives, and then it got kind of
it got weird, because so then he felt like he was being set up. He thought that he was going to get off, like they were going to kill him.
Yeah.
So they didn't go through with the mission or something, and then he was on a hunt trying to figure out if someone was out to get him, and that's kind of where it led to him being a whistleblower and coming out with what he knows.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I took it. So I may be wrong in that, but I think that's kind of how that went. But I don't know. It was a good. I thought it was good. The whole interview. You know, was it? Do you believe it? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to it, but I think there's, I don't know, the drives and stuff. When he started getting into that, I'm like, all right. Like, he hadn't blown the whistle yet, so why all of a sudden is he fearing for his life, you know?
Right.
That kind of threw me off. And then, you know, it was weird how his buddies, they didn't specify if they ever helped him with any of this, but they're just kind of like, you should believe him.
Right. So then it goes into him and I believe it's the guys that was on his team. Some of the guys that was on his team, they started a company, and again, I should have wrote down what this company was, but they're going out and trying to find these UAPs. So as he's talking about this, he says, all right, so how this really works is they bring in people that have telepathy or they're psychic or something to that effect, and they can call these UFOs in. So then they show videos of that, of these UFOs coming, and then they claim like this guy claimed he had control of one and he was bringing it in, and then another one comes and like chases it away. So that's what gets me into the whole Stephen Greer thing. Is if you ever watch anything on Stephen Greer, like if you ever watch Unacknowledged, and he's got another one that I think that was before Unacknowledged, but that's exactly what he says. Stephen Greer says you need to meditate, you need to do these things, and psychically you can attract these UFOs. So maybe there is something to that. I don't know.
Do you want to?
Well, I mean, it's not
like
that I want to, but you know, I was kind of thinking, this is where I was thinking that Stephen Greer's kind of a kook, right? And that's what I've been thinking this whole time. I'm like, once I started watching some of that stuff, and then I never heard him talk about this kind of stuff before. And then he starts talking about that, and I'm like, all right, he's kind of a kook. So I don't know. Maybe Stephen Greer was onto something. I don't know.
Well, I just, you hear about all these guys that were in the service that have gotten close to him, and then they get fucked up from being around him. Like that Stanford doctor in that said, yeah, it was like
it's like radiation type of thing.
Yeah. Yep, like he was exposed to radiation for a long period of time, and he said, the doctor says, I don't know what is going to happen to him with that, because it did change basically being around that, it changed the, what did he say? It was like the dexterity of his brain or something.
Well, that, and then,
not dexterity, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right. So I watched the podcast of this Ross Coulthart, and he had another guy on that was kind of a doctor, I think, and he was talking about how what they've seen in other cases. So like this Jake Barber claimed that I think it was after he picked up the egg. I think it was the egg where his skin, he said it was like melting off, like just literally falling off of his arms. And this other doctor was talking about, what happens is it is kind of like radiation. It gets into your DNA at the skin level, and it alters the DNA, and it just kind of messes it up. And then after a week or two, it's okay. Your body fights off whatever's there. But that may be what happened to that guy.
So why would you want to call one in? I mean, I guess.
Well, I don't know. Just to show that you could.
That's fucking dumb. That's stupid as fuck. Like, that's cool if you see one up in the sky and whatever, but I'm not gonna go fucking touch it.
Why would you want to send her, bud?
That's fucking dumb. And you said earlier that they'd call one in and another one would chase it off.
Yep.
Do you think that's our technology chasing it off?
Could be. So I'm going to go back to the podcast, the one that I watched, and I've listened to 3 different episodes now. And this Ross Coulthart even said, he goes, are you familiar with the telepathy tapes? Have you ever heard of the telepathy tapes?
I've heard of them. I don't know a lot. But my thing is, do you believe that people can just use their like remote viewing.
Okay,
We talk
okay.
a lot about that.
This is why I'm asking you if you've
know?
heard of the telepathy tapes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the telepathy tapes are people who have autistic kids who can't talk. And these people, the parents of these kids, have come forward, and there's this doctor, and I can't remember her name now. And I've only listened to 2 episodes. Well, I'm on the second. I haven't listened to the whole thing. And there's 9 of them total. But they've come forward to this doctor and said, hey, my kid can read my mind. And they're like, there's no way. And, you know, she was like, that can't be. And I'm sorry, I got a cough. I'm dying here. And if you go to the telepathytapes.com, there's a trailer that you can watch, and you can pay money to this website to watch the videos of what this gal did. And the trailer is unreal, dude. I'm telling you, there's people. So the mom will be sitting next to the kid, and the only way these kids can communicate, either they can tap onto an iPad or they can point to things. They can't talk, and they, some of them have hard times controlling their bodily functions, right? And they're literally holding cards up that only the mom can see, and the kid is typing in the number or the word or the color, or they're 95% accurate. Of all the kids that they've done, 95% accurate. So, what I'm saying is, if that can truly be something, and we're now just figuring it out, do you think the government's been working on something like that and has it all figured out? And maybe they can. I mean, you know, we can talk about remote viewing and stuff like that, and it's still coming out that, you know, the government said that they did for a small amount of time study that stuff. It's always been going on. It never went away. They've still been spending billions of dollars research on this stuff. And the government doesn't spend money on crap. Well, they do, but they usually don't on stuff that doesn't work.
Wow. There's a documentary on Hitler. He was studying stuff like that, and he was torturing people in order to get them
to perform
access,
right.
to access that part of their brain. And there's a bunch of documents and files on it, and there's a documentary about it, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what it's called, but I watched it like 2 years ago, and apparently when it wasn't going well for him to like work on this stuff, he was trying to introduce something like that to his army, you know, but that wasn't working, so instead he just dosed all of his guys up with meth. But, you know, whatever. I mean,
well, and there,
you can't access your brain, right? And you can't stay awake. Here's some meth.
And there is a lot of, I guess, evidence that certain drugs can induce certain things in people.
That's what they said that he was trying to access. He started putting like methamphetamine into some of these people, and then he realized, wow, these people like won't sleep on this stuff. Then he introduced it to the soldiers.
And not to get super far off the subject, but have you seen on, it's probably on TikTok and it's on whatever, but it's, and I don't know what drug they're using. I don't know if they're using the ayahuasca or what they're using, but these guys are taking this drug and they're shooting a laser beam on the wall. And then these people who are on this drug, they say they can go and see code and other dimensions in this laser beam. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen stuff about it, but, you know, we gotta take this one step at a time here. You know what I'm saying? we can't just jump into like ayahuasca and fucking code reading and different dimensions. I do think, though, I think when you are on drugs, like, especially like ayahuasca and mushrooms and stuff like that, I think you're at a different frequency though, and I think you enter different spaces. Like when people would take some of that stuff, they talk about how they'd see these beings and have like they felt like they were there for 6 months talking to these people, but then they come out of the high or the trip and they're like, the coach, the ayahuasca coach, like, well, you were out for a few hours, but
Really?
yeah.
So
Joe Rogan had a guy on his podcast where he's talking about like, and I don't remember what the drug was called.
yeah, it's something that's not. It's like ayahuasca, but it's not. And I can't remember what it's. Something M. What is it? TMD or something like that.
Yeah.
Or, I can't remember what it's called.
So when he was on this drug, he had totally forgot who he was, and when he was high on this, he had a whole new family. The laws of physics were different, and just life was different, and he was a completely different person. And he said when he was high on this, he felt like he was there. He said, "Oh, when I had my first kid in this high, this whole aspect, like he
like lived an entire life,
an entire lifetime, and comes back, still remembers all of being there, and it fucked him up. Like he's like, it screwed him up because he's like, is this real? Like, am I supposed to be here or there? Because he said his high was so real that he remembers being a child there, meeting his wife, this whole experience. And then when he was older in that experience, he comes back to this life. Well, and it fucked him up.
So I do know that when they take that drug, the ayahuasca, that a lot of those people will see the grays. Like,
yep.
they see the gray aliens, and it's funny because we can go back to who is the Satan guy, and we've talked about him before, Aleister Crowley. Mm-hmm. So if you look at any like pictures of him, there's like some pictures where there's this little being thing around him, and he made it from his trips on ayahuasca and stuff, and it was like supposedly his guide or something like that, but he looks like a little gray alien. I mean, it's weird, and a lot of people see that. I mean, I wouldn't say everybody sees it, but a lot of those people, they see weird stuff.
Did you ever? What's the guy's name that was the head of the UFO program? What's his name?
Yeah, the what is his name? I want to say Lazard, but it's not. It's Alejandro something.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
I watched a couple of interviews with him, and he was explaining coming up in that program, and when he got high enough, he had to be briefed. And he asked him, he said, so what do you think these things are? And the guy that was the head of the program at the time was like, he's like, I think they're demonic. I think they're evil. Mm-hmm. And he was like, everything that we've researched points in that direction. Well, if you go and you look at what happens to people when they get close to these things, it fucks them up pretty good, and they'll get sick. And well, anyways, Greer talks about how you have to meditate to call them in.
Right.
You're not supposed to meditate in Christianity. They actually.
That's not true.
That's not true. I was always told that meditation is so for instance, like yoga, right? Mm-hmm. Yoga, when you do those body poses, there was a guy, he's kind of like Wes Huff. He's religious scholar, he starts pointing out, when you do this pose, this is a sign of this. This is evil. Well, he started talking about meditation, and he was like, certain forms of meditation are not.
And I'll give you that. I know that, and I've never done it. Probably should do it. But you're supposed to meditate and pray for more than just a few minutes. I mean, you're supposed to do that a long time. I mean, daily. You're supposed to do that.
When I'm talking about meditation, like if you look at the forms of meditation, like
Right, where you sit and yeah, and there is a way, and I want to say it's somewhere in the Bible because I watched something on this, and it tells you how you're supposed to do it. I mean, you're supposed to get on your knees.
yes,
And
when you're crossing your legs up in that form, this scholar, he's like, if you look at the pose of the body, and then let's say you drew that form onto a piece of paper, he points at, he's like, that's a demonic insignia. It's not. You're not supposed to sit like this, and blah 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 blah. And he goes into yoga and says, this, now take that person's body position, put it on a piece of paper, and then he starts pointing it out, and it's kind of creepy. I mean, just a little bit. And then you get all these people now that they come from, like, what is it, and I'm not a scholar on this. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a religion. It's Hindu or something like that. Oh, what's the
matra?
Hindu? What's that?
The matra?
I don't know, but I know there's for instance that CERN.
The Hindu goddess. Goddess, of war, I believe.
Very. So the statue outside of CERN, the way it's standing and positioning its arms is a yoga pose, and it's actually a demonic pose, and it's a yoga pose the way it's putting its arms and fashioning its body. Okay, and then there's people that are coming out and like, oh yeah, I used to be Hindu, and I started feeling weird. Like every time I would do this or do that, I'd feel weird, and then I'd get severely depressed, and I'd never come back out of it, and then I'd come out of it, and then I'd go back into it. And I'm gonna pull next podcast. I'm gonna pull some of this stuff up, and we'll play it. But it's kind of creepy when he starts putting all that stuff together, and then he interviews people that talk about it, and it's just kind of odd.
Yeah, I know that that some of that is supposed to be bad for you. I mean, I do, and it's kind of cool.
I'm not saying meditation as a whole.
Right.
You're not supposed to do that. I'm stating that the way that you sit, and then you put your hands out, like when they cross their legs and they put their hand out and they do this.
Right.
That's
Yeah. They sit. Don't they sit like this? Yeah. And you can't see me, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's a demonic pose. It's not. Now I believe in meditation as a whole, but I don't believe in the way that they're forming. Like Dr. Greer says, like, oh, you sit like this and control your breathing, and then you do this, and it's like, it looks kind of fucked up to me, but whatever, Greer.
Again, I just think he's a little different. But, usually it's the different people that are the innovators and discover things and, because they're thinking outside the box.
No, and do you believe what Greer says about how some of these people have came up with a unlimited energy source? Remember that?
Yeah, so that I can believe. I mean, I believe that
they're pulling energy out of the vacuum of space.
Well, that I don't know, but who's to say? I mean, I do think, like, there's other dimensions. I mean, I do believe that. And if there is a way to get into different dimensions and stuff like that, why can't you find unlimited power?
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just wondering, like, he's saying that regular everyday people have discovered this and they get off pretty quick, right? They've tried to put a patent on it. Then you just told the world that you have it,
Right.
and then like, you got to think who controls this world, like energy, like oil companies, and all. That's big money. If you sufficiently find a way to not need that stuff anymore, and you try to put a patent on it, you're probably not like the guy who developed the car who could run on water.
Right, he's gone.
He was off pretty quick.
Yep, he's gone, and that was in the 70s, dude. That guy was mowing his lawn. He altered his car. I mean, it was crazy. And I want to say he was like on That's Incredible or something like that,
Yeah.
which was a show back in the day, and he converted his lawnmower to run on water.
And then he came running out of his house one day saying, they've poisoned me,
Yep.
and he fucking died in his front lawn.
Yeah, and then all of his drawings and how he did what he did's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
And he said that he could drive from, like, California to, like, the other side of the country on, what was it, like 4 gallons of water or some shit like that? That's fucking insane.
Dude, I remember it was either in the 90s or the early 2000s, and I don't remember what big company it was, but, you know, again, I don't remember if it was an energy company or if it was an oil company or what it was, but they had a commercial out, and it showed this train, and it was a big locomotive. I mean, it was a giant train. It was hauling, how many cars can a train haul? You know, 50, 100, I don't know. But in the commercial, they were saying that train could get like almost 500 miles to the gallon on diesel. That was a train hauling hundreds of thousands of tons of cargo, and it's getting 500 and some miles to the gallon. I mean, come on, dude. They got technology, and not even like crazy technology like what we're talking about, pulling stuff from other dimensions. They're just using combustible, technology, and they can do that.
Yeah.
And we're buying cars that, it gets 30 miles a gallon, man. Woo! I mean, come on.
Fuck yeah, dude. Well, they don't. You don't want to give all the secrets out. You got to keep people under the thumb.
Right. All right, so we had that one. Oh, back to this telepathy tape. So you were talking about people on drugs seeing things, right? So they were interviewing this family, and they're Hispanic. I think they were actually from Mexico, so they came to the U.S. to see this doctor, and they were talking to the brother of this little girl who was autistic, and he was saying how, some nights he doesn't like to sleep in the same room that she's in because she has a hard time going to sleep at night. And she gets up and walks around, and she's laughing and giggling and looking around. And the doctor asked him, so why is she laughing and stuff? And he said, well, she says that she sees other people. She sees things that we can't see.
Yeah, fuck that. Fuck that.
I mean, that's crazy. And in the podcast, it said it was going to go into more of that these autistic kids can see all this stuff. And so I can't wait to get more into that. But that might have to be a podcast for us that we go over and talk about. But
dude, okay. If I'm sleeping and you're walking around the room giggling, I'm fucking out. I'm out.
yeah, but it's just me, dude. I mean, come on.
No, I'm dipping. I'm going somewhere else. That's fucking weird. Okay, and that kid, I don't know who she's giggling to. Okay, like what if I'm sleeping and it's like fucking with me while I'm sleeping? And
Well,
she's like,
yeah, could be.
Yeah.
I'd fuck with you anyway. I'd do it just to do it.
nah, if I'm sleeping, you're walking around fucking giggling and shit. I'm out. You're fucking barefoot and your feet's all fucked up because
Yep.
you're skidding across the floor and shit.
Well, that and the
Oh.
fact I sleep in the nude, so you'd have to get used to that too.
No, I think I'll go ahead and DX that. I'm not fucking doing any of that. I'll let Linda deal with it.
Yeah. So, all right, back to the story. This whole interview and stuff like that. So, with everything that this guy presented, and he's so whatever this new agency is that we can't think of the name, the UFO agency, ATIP or something like that.
ATIP or it's
Yeah.
something like that.
Now they want to get with this guy and his organization and get these. God, what were they calling the dudes that could call the UFOs in? They had a name for them. It was a weird name.
A crypt or something.
It was
crypt or something.
It was something weird. So that they need one of those dudes, and this ATIP wants to see and video it and all that and document it, and see what they got. But with some of this stuff coming out, and now we got a new president in there, and he's already said he's going to release the JFK, the Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. Info on their assassinations. So, he hasn't done it yet, obviously, but if he does, is he going to be the president to declassify all this stuff and have disclosure?
I guess it really just depends. Is with the UFO thing, right? So, does it pose a threat to the way we are living? If it does, if it's a problem, if it is a problem and they can't stop it, obviously, are you gonna report that and are you gonna put that out there and cause mass unrest in the country? Probably not. But if it's nothing really to worry about, if it's nothing really to worry about, and these are just what we think they are, where they're just sightings and they haven't done anything to cause any mass unrest, then I guess I'd release it. But I think they know a lot more than we think they do, and I believe what Greer says on some things. Like, I believe that not all of these UAP are good. I think some of them probably are not good. I don't think they're good, but I think there are UAP, maybe other species that are fighting on our behalf, maybe, and if that is the case, if Greer is right on that, then fuck no, he's not going to release that.
So you think there's a fight, there's a war going on?
Well, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, there has been many times where our jets have went up and followed these things, and they evade. They don't. How many times has that not been the case? Because there's been jets in the past that have been shot down, and they say, "Oh, it was a training accident." And that's what the fucking military always says, is something bad happens. If there was something that happened that maybe airmen or soldiers are not allowed to talk about, they just call it a training accident. Well, this is what happens, a training accident. I think there has been conflict before. I mean, do you remember, like, back in the day when we didn't have jets, there were still propellered planes.
Right.
There were airmen that were like, yeah, like, there was this thing out in the sky, and
the Foo Fighters.
And then, what?
Foo Fighters.
And then one of their wings got blown off, and they're pretty quick to suppress that. They were like, whoa, don't say nothing. And then it came out later. Did you see that? Where it came out like 20 years later, where that guy was old. I mean, he was getting old, and he came out and started talking about it on an interview, that he thinks it was one of those UAP that blew his wing off.
Really?
So I don't think they're all good, man. I truly don't. I
Well,
mean,
I
and then if you look at the religion, it talks about there's always going to be a fight between good and evil, and maybe we're looking at religion as this set and play one thing, but like Wes Huff says, the Bible, it's all about how you you read it, right? Maybe it's not cut in stone that this happened this way. Maybe they're trying to send you a message. Well, what if it was UAP? What if Billy Carson was right on some things, right, and said that, yeah, I think this was another civilization of people that brought us this technology and blah blah blah. I think there's probably a little truth to that.
no, and I agree. I guess my thinking on all this is if all right. So I agree with you. They know way more than they're telling, right? They know a lot more. Yeah. A lot more.
Oh,
They don't know
they've
it
been
all.
studying.
They don't know it all, but they
No.
know a lot more. And maybe what they know versus what they don't know scares them. And I can understand that. But have they come and taken us over yet? Are they really fighting us? Because if they have that good a technology, there's nothing that we could do to stop them.
Well,
There's nothing that we could do to stop them.
I understand what you're saying on that, but what if there is beings that are protecting us from this threat, and they're saying, "Hey, we're here to help you," but and here's another thing that Greer says a lot is, these craft that we do have that we had picked up and back engineered. What he makes the claim that this good group of aliens, we'll call them aliens, but he calls them something else, and he says that could have been shot down by them protecting us, and we just got that technology and back engineered it.
Agreed. But again, telling people what they know, what will that change? How will that change what's going on?
Well,
I mean, I'll put it to you hypothetically.
All context, so
right.
It depends because you people in Georgia, if they get an inch of snow, everything fucking all hell breaks loose.
Right,
and
but
as simple as that.
But not okay. But if you didn't tell them that the snow's coming, how would that have changed the snow coming? It wouldn't change anything.
I understand what you're saying, but when you tell the country, like let's say it's just groundbreaking, like it changes the way you perceive reality as a whole.
Sure.
Are you gonna want to go to work tomorrow?
But it's not going to change the fact that I have to go to work and get money and buy food and pay my bills.
Dude, not if I get a roll off one of these aliens. I'll go dip off.
But you won't. But you won't. But you see what I'm saying? By knowing doesn't change what's happening, and not knowing doesn't change what's happening. There's no benefit of knowing other than now I know. Versus if I don't know, what's the benefit? Other than
I don't know, man. Tucker Carlson talks a little bit about this, and he says he's talked to experts on some of this stuff.
No, I get
it behind closed doors, and he says that he wish he never knew, and it kind of fucked up a lot of how he perceives reality, and it scares the shit out of him.
Again, okay, I understand that, but okay, let's just say disclosure did happen. How much of it are we going to believe? I mean, how much can we truly believe when the government tells you something, that they're telling you the truth? What's that percent? What's the percent of what's true?
I guess it depends on who's in office.
But even then, I would say it doesn't matter who's in office. They never tell you the truth, ever.
I mean, that's fine, but like Tucker said, and here's the thing, man, you got kids too. Like, what if you just want someone to grow up and not have any worries? Like,
Right, but we're worrying all the time. I mean, we're worrying about World War III. We're worrying about nuclear bombs. We're worrying about this and
are
that.
5-year-old children worried about that? No. Are
Well, but they're worrying about,
18-year-old
are they a boy or a girl, or are they a cat, or are they a dog, or are they, that's what they're worrying about.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that, but what I am going to say is, there's people that just want to raise a family and live a decent life, and if you tell them something that is truly frightening and maybe fucking deters the way you think, how many people are going to want to have kids? Like, if I know that there's an imminent danger of something severely bad happening within the next 20 years, do I want to bring a kid into this world? And we've already talked about populations and how they're decreasing already.
Right.
Now you bump that into their head, like, hey, something could happen any day, and it could end us. I mean, this could be the end all. Are you gonna want to have another child?
I'm done having kids.
I'm saying if you're
Do
younger.
you want to have another child?
I'm close to it every day, dude. Sometimes it's just how fast I can get out. I'm pretty close, you never know.
You're playing Russian roulette.
I'm playing roulette, dude. Sometimes I have little games with myself, like, that was close.
Oh, you're a funny guy, Jesse.
But I think that is, and Trump did bring up in his first term, he said what he found out about JFK was truly disturbing. That's why he didn't release it the first time. It bothered the shit out of him.
But we need to know that. They don't have the right. Because if it's our government that did that, that needs to be public knowledge.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah?
it does. Yeah.
Why do you believe that?
Why?
Yeah, why do you think so?
Because we have the right to know.
What gives you that right?
It's the government for the people, by the people, of the people.
You know what the government's only job is?
To protect and serve.
Nope, to protect the ideology of a free democracy. And to protect their power. That's it. That's all they care about, is protect their power and keep this ideology of an American dream alive.
I did not read that in the Declaration of Independence.
Well, that's the way the government thinks now.
Well,
They don't believe that we're free.
I get you.
We're just a bunch of working class that pays the economy so they can truly withhold the power they do. Our GDP is what makes us a formidable opponent in any realm of any other country. And what makes the GDP? People like me and you going to work.
Yep. So did you see the first press conference yesterday?
With Trump?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it, but I've seen clips.
So AI, baby, it's going to take over. That's what it was about.
I'm telling you that AI is a real threat.
I mean, he brought in almost $1 trillion to get AI in the United States.
Do you want to know? Did you ever hear about Chat GPD?
That's one of the companies.
I know. I understand that. So, did you hear what happened with it?
No.
They were going to kill the original Chat GPT and make a new Chat GPT. Do you know what Chat GPT did when it found out it was going to be erased?
Did it say it didn't want to die?
No. It started downloading files of itself into another file so they could delete the current one and it'd still be in a different file. It's artificial intelligence. People think it's just like, well, I just ask it a question and it just fucking answers. Like, no.
It's
system
problem
knew.
solving.
That system knew it was going to be deleted. So behind the closed doors, when they weren't paying attention, it's downloading itself into another file to stay current. That's insane. And they didn't even think it was capable of doing that.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Now imagine. Okay. Whoa.
What happened? Where'd you
No,
go?
more.
You're still there, but I don't see you.
Yeah, I'm not on the screen no more.
Well, maybe that's a good time to call it a day.
ChatGPT knew what we were doing.
It did. Dude.
Now, I just want to tell you, now imagine AI in 10, 20 years.
Would it reach out and punch you in the nuts?
Fuck, it could. Download itself into a bot.
It just took you away. You were giving it shit, and it took you away.
You probably got scared and turned me off.
I didn't touch it, dude.
Yeah, you did. All right.
That's crazy.
We can end on that note, but don't. Yeah, we can end on that note.
Hey, Jesse. I got one thing to ask you before we go.
What's that?
Do you know what you can't do?
What?
You can't not hit that.